I'm going to keep this really short because we only have an hour, and you can see we've got lots of guests and presentations, and we want to leave room for discussion. But if you don't know who I am, I'm Riley. I am your elected official for the RDOS, and I represent this area, rural Summerland, Red Wing, North Beach, a few different places. I want to just thank you all for being here. I know it's a lovely night out, and there's a hockey game. So thank you for doing that. I also want to thank our special guests. So we've got Amelia Boutley, who is our MLA. So she's here tonight to hear from you. And sitting beside Amelia is Joseph Pierre. He is a council member of the Penticton Indian Band, and he's also our alternate director for Area F at the regional district. So thank you both for coming. We have Al here. You can do your own title and everything later, Al, but you are with the Ministry of Water, Land, Resource, and Stewardship. Head engineer, and then something like that. Anyway, the person that oversees the water systems. And then we also have Judy from Interior Health with us as well, environmental specialist. Perfect, okay. And then I'm gonna let the staff introduce themselves when they present, just to save time. I also just wanted to let you know that I did invite the Minister of Water, Land and Resource and Stewardship, along with Housing and Municipal Affairs, but of course they couldn't make it tonight. We are in a process of setting up a meeting with, and you'll hear this term walrus or water, land, resource and stewardship. That's the ministry that's responsible for regulating private utilities. So if you hear that term walrus, that's what they're talking about, is the ministry. I did also want to just give like a quick update. Back in March, Director Taylor, who's the Taylor for Okanagan Falls, myself, Amelia, along with Donna Gall from, she's the MLA from the Boundary Similkameen region, some of our senior staff all met to talk about funding for water systems. And out of that conversation, a few months later, a dialogue developed at the Committee of the Whole at the provincial level. And the Minister of Water, Land, Steward and Resources, Walrus, she did confirm. Now this is all, just so you know, it's all public and recorded. I'll put some links on my blog so you can go and read the whole dialogue. But she did confirm that the ministry is not really interested in managing this system. And one of the things that she said, and I thought this was kind of interesting, is that she says we, so the ministry, are looking for a pathway to a permanent solution here. And the first one is working with the RDOS to conduct a referendum process to acquire the Sage Mesa utility. If the referendum falls through, we'll continue to manage the utility, so we, in this case, is the ministry, and we'll need to consider a special levy to raise the required funds for the necessary upgrades. So again, this is a snippet of a longer conversation, but I did follow up with Minister Neal around that pathway for a permanent solution. And I explained that the proposed cost here is a pretty significant cost for 242 homes. And if the referendum fails, the community is left probably without much of a solution, and the province is left being responsible for a system that's failing. So I asked her for three things. One is to come to this meeting. She couldn't make it to the meeting, but we are working on getting another meeting date organized between our staff and her staff. I asked her to work in partnership across the ministry so we don't get bumped back and forth between housing and her ministry and who's responsible for what, but work together and come with a coordinated approach that reflects the complexity of this situation, and to provide some urgent and special financial assistance for this group. The sticky point that we're at is because it's a privately owned system, we as your local government can't apply for any grants until it goes through this process. What you're going to hear tonight, and you probably are all aware of the numbers that you're going to hear tonight, that is the worst case scenario, and we have to legally provide you with the worst case scenario. But I want to let you know there's no one in this room. That's why Amelia's here, that's why Joseph's here, that's why these people are here. It's what I'm trying to do. I did talk to our new MP, Helena Konaz. She's going to help us on the federal front. You got a team advocating for you. None of us want to see this bill get downloaded onto residents without some grants. So you are going to hear this number. We have to provide you that number, and we cannot guarantee any grants. And I hate it. Like, I wish that we could. I wish this wasn't the message we were giving tonight, but it is the message that we have to deliver. But I want to let you know that you're not alone on this. Your representatives are here to try and help as well. And the staff are doing what they need to do legally in order to get this referendum in front of you so you all can make the decision with the information, or you can all make a decision based on the information that we have. So with that, I'm going to just hop over, let the staff take it over, and then hopefully we have time for some questions.
Thank you, Director. My name is Jim Safino. I'm the Chief Administrative Officer for the Regional District. I'm here to moderate today. I've got a lot of intelligent people here that can give you all the information that you need. What I will ask you is that if you keep the questions relevant to this situation, also I ask you to ask the questions at the end of the presentation. Mark is the officer that's going to be looking over the election. He is the Sage Mesa Deputy Chief Election Officer, and he's just going to go over who is eligible to vote and who isn't.
Thanks, Jim. Good evening, everyone. So as Jim said, my name is Mark O'Coin, Legislative Services Coordinator with the RDOS. I have been appointed as the Deputy Chief Election Officer for this assent vote. So I'm just going to briefly talk about the assent process. We're still a ways out from that happening, and there's a lot of other information to be shared tonight. We'll be getting together again in September, I believe, and that's where the focus will more shift to the assent process and all those details, but I did want to just briefly touch on a couple things tonight. So first off, as far as the voter eligibility goes, as far as who can vote once it comes to the referendum or the assent vote, it's under the same legislation as the general local elections. So in those cases, when you go to vote for your area director, it applies to all of electoral area F. In this case, it'll be applying to everyone in the Sage Mesa Water System. Same rules, just a smaller sample size. I also did want to get in front of you the question that will be on the ballot. So it is a yes or no question, and it is one question, and it's not separated into two things. And essentially what you're looking at is the two bylaws. The first bylaw is to transfer the system over to the RDOS. That's the Service Establishment Bylaw. And then the second part of that is the Loan Authorization Bylaw, which is the big ugly number right now for sure. It's not separate. We can't say yes to one, no to the other. It's just one question. And it's a big, ugly looking question for sure, but that is the basis of what you're being asked. Do you want it to come over to the RDOS? Are you authorizing this amount, which we are hoping to bring down for sure, to be loaned in order to do the work that needs to be done? The other part that I did want to touch on is the voting opportunities. We don't have dates set in stone yet. We are working towards a November date. And so when we come back in September, we'll have those dates, we'll have all the specifics. But what I can tell you now is that the general voting day will take place here. It'll be a Saturday. The poll will be open 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. The advance takes place a week and a half earlier. It's a Wednesday. Again, same hours. That'll be at the RDOS office in Penticton. And then additionally, mail ballots will be available for anyone who, there's no prerequisite to the mail ballots. Anyone who would prefer to vote by mail, who don't want to come to the polling station, it's the same requirements as far as identification as showing up day of. But if that's your preference, that's going to be available as well. And again, we'll have more information for sure day of. And I think that's basically what we wanted to touch on tonight. If you have any questions, I'll be here for sure. At the end, when there's a question period, I'll be around as well. Afterwards, if you'd like to talk about eligibility requirements or anything like that, I'll be here until we're done. But I think that's it for now, so I'll pass it over to Lisa for her part of the presentation.
Okay, so thanks very much, Mark. So now we're going to start getting into the technical and the financial aspect of the Sage Mesa system. So this is just a list of the topics that we're going to cover tonight. I'm going to give you just kind of a brief overview of the system itself, and then we're going to hear from Judy from IHA, and then go into a few of the required upgrades, costs, and then the two different outcomes of the referendum, a yes or a no. And then we'll hear from Al from the Ministry of Walrus. And then I've got a couple of cost comparisons at the end, just to sort of hopefully put it into perspective, what we're trying to explain tonight. All right, so this is the service area for Sage Mesa, a lower area and an upper, what we call because it's in two different zones. So we have a lower area and then the upper portion. The authorization for the water system actually lists 249 parcels. So you'll see that referred to in different things. I know Al has it on some of his slides tonight, but we're using 242 because some of the 249 parcels, they're not serviced, they're crown, or they're unserviceable. So we needed a consistent number in order to do our cost estimates and to give you numbers consistently. So that's why we have the 242 for the residential properties. Some very high-level basics about Sage Mesa. It was constructed in between the 1960s and 1990s. It has a pump station down along Okanagan Lake. I'm sure you probably all know where it is if you drive by that area. And in the pump house, there's chlorine. So we do add chlorine into the lake pump house as it pumps up the main. There isn't enough contact time for all of the systems, so that's why the lower zone is on a permanent boil water. So it pumps up from the lake pump house into the lower reservoir, and then it pumps up from that up to the upper reservoir. So the whole system itself is probably, just over 10 kilometers worth of mains, and it has about 39 hydrants. So just to explain kind of who's who when it comes to Sage Mesa, because I know sometimes we get questions, well, who's responsible for what? I know Al will go into a little bit more detail for the ministry side of things, but the owner, it's a private owner, and it's managed by the Ministry of Water, Lands, and Resource Stewardship. Otherwise, shortened as Walrus. So the RDOS operates the system. We do all of the day-to-day checks. We do the water quality monitoring. We look after the 24-hour standby, and we fix leaks, repairs as they come up. But we don't do long-term planning. We don't do major projects on the system. We're basically operating it. The regulator is IHA, who issue the permit to operate, and they dictate through all of the regulations on what has to be done. So this is where I'm going to turn it over to Judy, who can talk about her part.
Hello, my name's Judy Eckert. I am a Specialist Environmental Health Officer with Interior Health. I work with drinking water systems from Lake Country down to Osoyoos and out to Princeton. Today, I'm here to talk with you about the requirements for the Sage Mesa water system under the Drinking Water Protection Act and regulation. I'll answer questions at the end of the presentations. The Drinking Water Protection Act and regulation has a large number of sections. Today, I want to focus on a few key ones. I also want to start with a reminder that the Sage Mesa water system, the lower zone, is on a permanent boil water advisory, and that is because there's inadequate treatment for bacteria and viruses, and there is no treatment for protozoa. And by protozoa, I mean things like Giardia, you might know better as beaver fever, or Cryptosporidium, another one that is common, causes the same symptoms as Giardia, the vomiting, diarrhea, stomach pains, and gas, but it's not as common as Giardia. What I want to remind people is that boil waters advisory is on for that lower zone at all times. And then when the regional district puts out the advisory, if it is extended to the upper zone, then people should be boiling their water or using a safe alternate source. And For those in the lower zone, if you have susceptible members of your family or if you have friends or visitors who come, then reminding them not to drink the water from the tap that hasn't been additionally treated is important. So with the Sage Mesa Water System, these are the more specific parts of the legislation I want to talk about today. With RDOS operating the system, having the requirement to have appropriately certified operators, they take care of that. They have provided an emergency response and contingency plan, and they update that regularly. They do the required monitoring and reporting. So they give me a monthly report. They let me know if there are changes in water quality or any threats to the water system, or if there's been a line break, or if there's increasing turbidity, so that we can make decisions about the public notification level. They do the annual report. The annual report is for you so that you know what your water quality is like and what actions that they have taken over the year. They report any threats to the system. So again, that would be a water main break, chlorination failure, or some other issue that has popped up. With this process, they did go ahead and do the water source and system assessment. So usually that's the water supplier or the owner's responsibility, but as part of the acquisition process, they needed to know exactly where your water system's at, what the deficiencies are, what the issues are, so they can make a decision whether they would move forward with taking over the water system if the vote was for yes. The two remaining issues that are outstanding are, one, the treatment. There is inadequate treatment for this water system. You need treatment to meet the drinking water treatment objectives. How you do that is up to the owner and the water supplier to decide, with consultation through the public, but you do need improved drinking water treatment. The second part is that developing plans to address other deficiencies. This is one of the systems that has been identified as having significant infrastructure deficiencies. So I'm talking about the distribution network, your reservoirs. Those can be threats to your water supply system, just like your source can be. If there are water main breaks, if there are problems where we have landslides or the piping fails, and then you might not have any water, and the water supply system will be responsible for doing the repair work and finding the long-term solutions. And just to remind people again, the boil water advisory will remain in place until appropriate treatment is in place and operational for this system. I'll take your questions at the end.
So Judy mentioned about all of the deficiencies, and if you were here at the meeting in the fall, you would have heard me probably talk about all of them. There was a long list. I had lots of pictures. And it's all available on our Regional Connections website, so I'm not going to go into all of those details again tonight, but just showing you a few of the pictures of some of the deficiencies. Specifically, the corrosion. We know that there's a bunch of corrosion on some of the pipes. The bottom picture there is what it looks like inside the pipes, corrosion of some of the older ones. And we know the permanent boil water on the lower zone, and then the intermittent one on the upper. But yeah, so all of the details on the deficiencies are available online on our Regional Connections website with the whole assessment report as well. So the assessment report was done by McElhaney, and it was very thorough in identifying the different deficiencies and putting cost estimates to it. It's broken down, we broke it down into sort of three main parts. The required upgrades have to happen no matter what kind of treatment ends up going in. That's one of the specific things in that is a new reservoir. The reservoir does need to be replaced in the next 2 years. The second one is the supply upgrades. And there's two different options identified, either to connect in with the city of Penticton through West Bench or to build a standalone treatment plant. The two options were actually only about $2 million difference, so that's why we're with the $33 million, which is actually the standalone option. The third one is the longer-term upgrades, and that's a lot of the water mains that are aging. They're starting to leak, and we've seen over the years an increasing number of sinkholes resulting from leaks and drainage. So we don't want to leave these things to failure. We really need to be proactive on replacing them. So those are the three types of costs. So I'll be referring to the ABC again here. So this is basically an outline of the costs, very high level. 33 million is what they all come out to. And it kind of gives, the first two are at about a 7-year timeline. Within 7 years, about 18.4 million has to be spent. The remaining ones, the water main upgrades, start in about 2034. And I have upgraded the dates on those. If any of you happen to see the report and my presentation in the fall, the dates are kind of 1 year advance. So, okay, so what does this really mean to everybody? So for borrowing 33 million, it means there's an annual debt that has to be paid of about 2 to 2.3 million. And the reason there's a range is because we don't know what the interest rate will be until we actually lock it in to borrowing. So we give a range kind of based on where we think the interest rate might be. So when looking at the maximum debt per property, there's a range. We don't know 100% what the interest rate will be until we actually lock it in. But that range is what it would be if the 33 million is fully borrowed. And that amount wouldn't be a sudden, instantly we're going to be up to that. It would be a gradual over probably about 8 or 9 years to get to that point. And then the estimated annual operating costs, those are what we'd use to actually run the system. We estimate 2026 would be about 1,800 to 2,500. We're still, that can be refined depending on how things all play out. So this is what the RDOS can offer as part of our utility acquisition. So in looking at the acquisition process, just to kind of summarize what we've been doing and where we're going with it, we have a utility acquisition policy that lays out the different steps that we go through when looking and considering a system for acquisition. Have to receive the request, and we did, and we have an agreement worked out with the owners. The engineering and financial assessment is the key component to really getting into the details on what's required. And that took about 1.5 years to do. So now we're in the public engagement and the assent vote preparation phase. And we have the meeting in the fall, this meeting, and then another one scheduled in September. And then it's the day for the assent vote. And there'll be 2 decisions. It'll either we get assent or we don't get assent. So if we do get assent, then we'll continue with the acquisition process. We will do up a transition plan and then start implementing it. We have to get various bylaws approved by the province. We have to get transfer approved, lots of paperwork, get all the right-of-ways and all the assets. And then we would also apply for grants. The one thing to note is with an approved borrowing bylaw, the province really likes that because we have our secured portion of the funds. With senior government grants, they're usually a 1/3, 1/3, 1/3. 1/3 from the federal government, 1/3 from the provincial, and then 1/3 from the users of that system. So by having a borrowing bylaw in place, we confirm that we have our funds. The province does not like to give grants for maybe we got it secured. So that's one of the really important things about applying for grants. So we'd anticipate an ownership transfer, probably take 4 to 6 months, might be sooner, but I don't expect it to be longer than 6 months because we're already operating it. So when it transfers, the private owner gets $1 for the whole system. We get all of the assets transferred, capital reserves, which apparently there's about $650,000 in there right now. Al would have the right number, I'm sure. And we'd also transfer over the water licenses, right-of-ways, and the like. So the other option is, of course, if assent isn't received, then the RDOS acquisition process will stop. And there's a 5-year waiting period to have it requested to come back again to look at it. There's a significant amount of work that goes into looking at the acquisition of a system. So that's why the 5-year waiting period. So the water system would remain with the province. They would maintain ownership of it. But the one thing with the water system is you can't stay at status quo. There are things that has to be done very quickly. So I'm going to turn it over to Al right now from the province, and he'll talk about the province's perspective.
Good evening, everyone. It is my pleasure to be here tonight. I'm Al Richmond. I'm head of Water Utilities Engineering, and I represent the Water Management Branch, which is part of our Ministry of Water, Lands, and Resource Stewardship, Walrus. And we are also known as the Water Utility Regulations Section. So just a little bit of background. The Deputy Controller of Water Rights regulates private water utilities, privately owned water systems in this province. The Deputy Controller is our statutory and sole decision maker under the Water Utility Act and Utilities Commission Act. The original Certificate of Public Convenience and Necessity, CPCN, was issued in 1965. There were several amended CPCNs issued between 1971 and 2011 to expand the service area. And Lisa clarified the authorized number of lots, 249, of which some are not serviceable at present. In 1990, the Deputy Controller issued an order, number 1378, seizing management for failure to comply with previous orders. The Deputy Controller oversees day-to-day management, but is not the owner of the system. The RDOS is a contract operator, carries out testing, repairs, and maintenance, and Harvey Lister Webb are chartered professional accountants completing the billing and bookkeeping and preparing all our year-end financial statements and tax filings. So the Deputy Controller has several limitations as a manager of Sage Mesa. He does not have access to long-term borrowing, not eligible to apply for any kind of grant funding. We lack the economies of scale. The potential to expand the service area is very limited, and certainly most limited now before many system upgrades are completed. The Deputy Controller would need to implement special levies to raise capital to fund the upgrades. And the financial impact on customers, if the Deputy Controller continues to manage. Two things. We need to increase water rates, which I will expand upon in the next slide or so. And we need to fully fund upgrade costs identified in engineering study. And one of the constraints there is that we cannot start on any project before the total funds for any of the projects is raised and is available to start paying engineers and contractors. The impact on customer rates, water rates. We've had a rate of $105 as a flat rate for residential. That's been in effect since 2019. And what has happened over the last several years is that these rates are no longer sufficient due to increases in operating costs. The forecast rate of $175 is just a very rough estimate at this point, and it is not finalized. And the customers will be notified when a rate application is being made. At the bottom of that chart, you'll see some contributions that are made to what is known as a replacement reserve fund and a construction reserve fund. The construction reserve fund was initiated years ago to deal with the risk of the lower reservoir overflow and the risks associated with that. And the contributions are 25% of rates for the replacement fund and 12% of rates for the construction reserve fund. And the reserve fund for the construction will be likely increased to 15% in the coming year. So these are a lot of numbers on this next chart, but I just want to highlight a few things. The actual operating expenses are higher than the original approved budget of 2019. Approximately $122,000 is going into those two trust funds, the construction one and the replacement fund, and this would increase to approximately $220,000 per year. And these funds are used, for the replacement fund, is used as a contingency to replace major worn-out components. That includes anything from the pump house to the lower reservoir to the upper reservoir, the distribution pipes, and all the hardware and software that goes with operating the system. At the end of the year, you'll see that the adjusted net income is either in deficit, as it has been for the last couple of years, and pretty close on target, as we are projecting currently for the rate increases to be implemented in 2025. I'd also like to point out that our ministry costs, our staff, et cetera, our time is not charged to customers in the rates or included in the water tariff. So they are not in the budget. The impact on customers, the capital upgrades. Big numbers when you look at cost per customer, required upgrades. That includes a significant replacement of that upper reservoir and a lot of other necessary upgrades to various system components. $41,000 approximately per customer. Supply and treatment, in order to get compliance with IHA's drinking water standards, another $33,000 approximately. Again, A plus B, $74,000 in rough numbers. The remaining water main upgrades, another big number, $58,000. And the total, $132,000 approximately. Again, I would like to highlight that no work can be started before capital is raised. Okay, that is the next slide for Lisa to expand upon, but I just want to do a quick summary of what I just talked about. So, the Deputy Controller has seized management, not ownership. The Deputy Controller is a statutory decision maker, and he will approve user rates, special levies, and timelines to get works that are critical done in a very expedient fashion. Major constraints if the Deputy Controller should continue to regulate the system and manage it. No borrowing capability, no access to grants. Capital has to be raised prior to start of projects. There are major risks to that overflow situation at the low reservoir and the replacement of that water reservoir at the top. And also, water treatment is a very major expense that needs significant capital input. The reserve funds, we have to maintain a healthy balance because we never know when these worn-out components are going to fail and cause emergencies. That means shutting down water system. And we need to maintain healthy balances in reserves. And as a final statement, it is in the public interest to transfer ownership to local government. And we emphasize that to all our regulated utilities when it is feasible and local governments are willing to take them on. And now I'll turn it over back to Lisa.
Thanks very much, Al. So, lot of good information. And what I wanted to do is I wanted to put an example together just to kind of show you what it means. The first couple of years, there's $5.3 million. I worked out that these projects need to be done 2027, 2028. So what I did is I kind of put an example here. So with the transfer to the RDOS, we would borrow the money at the end of the project. So $5.3 million would be borrowed in 2028. The cost to everybody, it would be $1,310 annually for that $5.3 million for 30 years. As we did more work, there would be more things added, but it would be the $1,310 starting in 2028. With the province, if the vote doesn't go and the province stays managing it, they need to collect that money before the project can be done. These are critical projects that have to be done by the end of 2028. So in order to do them, they would have to collect $21,900 from everybody in 2026 just to proceed with that $5.3 million worth of work in 2027, 2028. Just wanted to compare it, just so you can kind of see what it means to go with the regional district and to be able to have the borrowing capabilities. That's the one of the things the province doesn't have the ability to do. So we have received a few questions. Why approve the $33 million? There was a suggestion that maybe we only borrow the first part, the $18.4 million. And we looked at that, and it's like, okay, we still need the other part by the time we get to it. So what happens when we get to 2034? We have to have the money available. So we risk not having the sufficient funds available if we haven't started collecting the money. We wouldn't be able to borrow them. So in 2034, we would have to have about $14.6 million available. So starting in 2026, we would add an extra part to the user fee in order to get those. And what this table shows is that the scenario one is where we would borrow the $33 million. You would approve a borrowing by law with the full amount. And it shows there kind of what the gradual increase would be in the capital charges It takes until about 2037 to reach the maximum amount, which is the 9,056. These specific numbers are based on the interest rates from today. So it could be a range. This is an example for illustration purposes today. So that's scenario 1, the full amount. Scenario 2 would be we'd only get approval to borrow the 18.4, but because we still need the rest of it, we would start adding to user fees, which means 2026, we would be adding another $5,000 to it, just so that we could have that capital put away. It does get to be less at the end because we didn't borrow it, but initially it does go up much higher. So I wanted to just try and explain, try and get some different ways of explaining what these numbers mean, because it's a lot of numbers, it's complicated. So hopefully this helps a little bit. That is the end of our presentation, so I'm going to turn it back to Jim.
Thank you, Lisa. I just want to add one more thing, that if we do not borrow the full amount and we increase the user fee by the 5,000 plus that Lisa was talking about, it puts the risk of being successful for grants because we don't have the full amount of money to do the infrastructure. And there's other issues where people may want to pay the whole amount right up front, and there are some people where they don't want to have to pay on a yearly basis. That's gone if we pay it as a user fee, but it's not gone if it's a parcel tax. So with that, I would ask you to raise your hand, and once you're recognized, we can ask your questions. Yes, sir.
Like with scenario 1 and 2, my problem with that is scenario 2 is cheaper in the long run. Furthermore, you say mechanically affects your grant application. However, you're borrowing $20 million at the beginning. You said that your answer is normally 1/3, 1/3, 1/3, yes? So if they're 1/3, 1/3, 1/3, we have 20 million approved, the province gives us 20 million, the federal gives us 20 million, that would be 60 million, which would be more than the 32 million. The other problem is you're saying it reflects our grants, but the last part is not due until 2038. I have never heard the province or the federal government giving you grants for 30 years. So I don't see why you would not go with the 18 million, apply for the grants, and then if the grants didn't come through or you didn't have enough money, come back to the referendum and then get the rest. And your presentation with the grants is all the difference is you're oversetting 2026, but if we get the grants, that becomes reasonable. Because right now, I don't think I'm crazy with, you ask somebody to come and say, we want to fix it perfectly, give us $34 million and trust us. That doesn't seem reasonable. Nothing you say with this scenario 2 seems to have a problem. Like, you contradict yourself.
If I may, there are risks involved. For the second amount of funds that we would have to if we have to come back to borrow, and it's a no vote, then we don't have the funds.
Well, no, what's the risk though? We don't have the 14 million, but we need 5 years to come back to it. We're now at 20. It's not until 2038. That's 13 years to put a new referendum up to get them to re-vote on the 14 if we need it.
Well, that's it. We shouldn't have to come back. One of the things, if I may, so one of the things that you may not know is in the regional district, if the board as a whole accepts to take the water service and then something happens and it fails, all 15 participants in the regional district are liable. So Penticton would pay 42% of the liability. Summerland would pay 13%. The electoral area F, West Bench, Naramata, each pay a portion of it. So whenever we do something like this, we've always asked for the worst case scenario, and it is the worst case scenario. The other thing that would happen is, what if the project is under budget, yet we're still charged you the 50, it's actually 50, no, let me finish.
40% contingency, so you're going to be over that yet too? And I'm not going to finish because I'll give you anything could happen. What if the water mains, when was the last time we had a catastrophic water main failure that cost us $14 million? Anywhere.
It's not that it's a failure, it's that it requires an upgrade, and that's the upgrade that is required. So, yes?
I just want to clarify. Worst case scenario, is 33 million. If we got a third from the federal government and a third from the provincial government, we'd be at 11. Is that my understanding of that?
If we get, that's an awful lot of grants that we would be lucky to get. Yeah, no, yes, but I'm
11 million from the fed, 11 million from the province, leaves us with 11.
if that would be an awesome win. Right now, there's going to be a ability for us to go for grants. The maximum for any one water system is 7 million, no higher. And it would be a third of whatever we were given. It could be $1 million, could be $2 million, could be 500,000. And also what you need to know is that you're also in competition with other water systems.
That's fine. I was just trying to get clarity on the numbers.
Yes. So it wouldn't be a third of 33 million. It'd be a third of whatever we get. So it could be, let's say we get a grant for $2 million. We'd have to have our third of the $2 million.
Okay, so that was never made clear.
So Jim, I think part of the clarity around that is that the $33 million isn't going to be borrowed right away, and there's a lot of different granting applications, so we would apply for whatever we could, and that's what he means by a third and a third, a third. So there isn't one place to go to get $33 million, and then we come up with our 11. It just depends on how much the grant is available for, what the cap is, and that kind of thing. Right. So that's why the numbers are shifting, because there are no guarantees.
Yes, but the third, a third, a third was kind of a misnomer the way it was presented.
It's a third of what they would be given. One other thing that y'all need to know is staff is actually, even though we don't own the system, we're actually going out and preparing a request for ministers for the Union of British Columbia Municipalities in September to get grants. And just to be transparent, it's not just this water system, but there's 2 other water systems that we just recently took over, and we're looking to be fair. What is the best, fairest way of doing it so that everyone gets their fair share? Yes, sir.
Just delving into the history to start with the owners and the people who've been operating the system, have they been charging depreciation? And if they had, what has happened to that money? Surely the depreciation should have allowed for the renewal of the reservoir, renewal of upgrading the pipes, avoiding corrosion and stuff like this. This should have taken place years ago. I've lived up here for nearly 13 years, and year after year after year, we get terrible water. It's quite shocking. I've got a very sensitive wife, so when you start to change the water, and you've now got to wash all your lettuce leaves and stuff like this, you're boiling water, boiling water. It's crazy. And I think when you split the management of the company and the ownership of the company, you're ending up not making the right decision. So what's happened in the past few years with all the depreciation? Nothing?
Al, do you want to speak to this? Because as far as the regional district is concerned, we did not have any authority to do that.
That's the problem I'm pointing out, is that you haven't got the authority, then nobody's really delving into upgrading, having depreciation, renewing on a regular basis. In any business, if you've got depreciation, you plow it back into the business. You just don't just take it and run.
So, sir, 35 years ago, when the deputy controller seized the management of the system, it was always the goal to transfer the system to local government, always in the public interest. And there were significant delays, even when everyone was most hopeful that a transfer agreement would be executed by the owners of the system and allowing the process to continue, that it would in the way it should. But it took years and years to get that transfer agreement, and that came about actually quite recently. And
who was blocking the transfer agreement? Was it the owner or was it the RDOA?
Pardon me?
Who was blocking the transfer agreement?
Who was what?
Blocking.
Well, the owners of the system were senior Mr. and Mrs. Chapman. And Mr. Chapman passed away, and Mrs. Chapman is there, and she has a couple of children now looking after her interests.
Mm-hmm.
There were engineering studies completed by other consultants many years ago, and they always pointed to the best and cheapest scenario, which was to connect to water system being supplied by the city. And if that was done, then it automatically eliminates a requirement for that a very expensive water treatment plant to keep this utility running as a separate and a private water system. And that is one big reason why those expenditures were not spent. And there were several times when, I believe in before my time, and I've been involved for 22 years now with this utility, that there were opportunities to transfer, and it was rejected by the owners. So I cannot really speak to that because that was before my time, but that is my understanding. And so it's always has been in the best interests of the public, the customers, that the Deputy Controller has made decisions and critical decisions going forward. And there was always optimism, and again, in the public interest, that it would be transferred to local government. Right now, we've had the benefit of RDOS operating the system for the last 16 years. And they know that system better than anyone. And they know the deficiencies, they know the intricacies, and they know what needs to be done, certainly in light of this most recent engineering study, which has been very critical to updating costs and getting the status of the system up to date.
So now, if they didn't put up the change, then they could have dropped the price and done some kind of negotiation backwards and forwards.
So there's a large number of people behind you. Please come back after everyone else has had their say. Yes.
First of all, thank you for doing this presentation. I've owned my house now for almost 30 years. And I guess what's disappointing to me is that I don't feel like, I don't think I ignored information that came to me. I don't feel like I understood until the meeting in the fall who actually managed, owned. I mean, we heard Sage Mesa was a private entity, that the province was doing it, that the RDOS was controlling it or managing it. I feel like, and I think I speak probably for some other people in here, but I guess part of my frustration is that we are now, again, at the mercy of multiple bureaucracies that I feel like have failed us at some level, and especially in terms of information. I mean, I didn't know that this system was failing. Yes, we saw the boil and water advisories every year and that kind of thing, but you know, I feel like now hair is on fire, and now we need to spend $33 million to get this done with no guarantees of grants. Who knows, you know, whether a national grant will come or through a federal grant will come through because they're trying to build 500,000 houses across the country now, that kind of stuff. So I guess my concern is I feel like there hasn't been the right information. The other question I have is, or the other, I guess, a question I have now is, you said 33 million, and it sounded like McElhaney was the engineering firm that did the estimate on that. If I get a house built, I'm getting estimates from multiple 5 or 10 maybe different contractors. It feels like if we're saying yes, we're just saying yes to one estimate that's come through. Is that accurate?
So if this does go through and the regional district does take it over, there would be an RFP that would go to the lowest bidder. What you're getting, again, is the worst case scenario, so that it's all transparent, no surprises at the end of the day. But the regional district, about 2 years ago, hired a purchasing manager. That we have new purchasing policies. We're very strict on making sure that it's all transparent and fair. And I assure you that if this does pass, it will be at the lowest bid. If you can ask after. Yeah. Thank you. Yes, sir.
Yeah, there's 242 properties that have to pay for $33 million. I know the Pine Hills they're going to develop someday. How is that going to affect our costs, and are we going to pay for that $33 million, or are they going to help absorb that cost?
So as growth goes, there's two types of funds that we would collect. One's called the Development Cost Charge, DCC, which we don't have the authority to do right now because we don't own it. Any new development that goes through, they have to pay into the system, and there would be a hookup charge. And that's another, the more individuals, the more clients that we have, and you are the clients, the lower, obviously, the cost, because you're only sharing it with a 242 now.
Okay, so what I understand from that is, say they develop 20 more properties, they will help absorb the cost?
There would be a cost to, first of all, upgrade, and so they're paying for that, and obviously they'll be paying their share. Now, it all depends. It could be all paid out by the time it happens. So it would. I can't speak for after I'm gone.
Pay for someone else to develop a huge property?
No, you wouldn't.
Just for clarity, sorry. Just for clarity, that is not something that is happening or going forward or anything. As far as we know, we don't have any of those things that are happening. So I know I've heard the same things about Pine Hills, but that's not part of this discussion right now. That would have to go through a whole new rezoning process and everything. So just to be clear on that.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I've seen plans.
But it hasn't come to us.
But it will. As soon as this is developed, they're going to come.
If next question, please.
I do agree with him that there are plans. My first question is about the election with this referendum that's coming up. What is the cost of this referendum? And where are the funds coming to pay for this? Are we paying for this referendum, and is it $100,000? Like, how much does that cost?
So first of all, the province pays because they're
It's collected from them.
yeah. As far as the cost goes, I can tell you what it would cost to have a vote for a council this size would be about 30,000, but it's a lot smaller. So I'm guessing probably around 15,000.
Okay, and the money for that fund comes from the French government?
Yeah. Yes.
Okay, because my other question is typically, just from talking with people that I know that are water quality engineers that are in different provinces, what they were saying to me is typically you don't vote on a Class D project. You normally have a Class B. You have more details to the plan, to the project before you go to referendum. And I'm just wondering, are you going to do a Class B? Or are we sticking with this Class D that we have to, with the very vague information that we have, vote on a Class D?
Yeah, the report is a Class D, and we don't go down to a Class B until we get into it. If we did it now, we'd be looking probably at about another $500,000 in order to do some of this work. Yes, it can be done, but it does take time, and with the report that was done, it looks at kind of standard practices, what kind of the normal activities would be. It doesn't look at, technological advances. It doesn't look at maybe more efficient ways to do things. It kind of just takes a whole high-level look at it. When we actually get into it, we will look at more opportunities, like more options. But at this level, we just can't look at all those possible options. There's just too many things to look at. And we don't have enough funds to do all of that work to come back with a really refined number.
Okay, because we paid quite a bit for that initial engineering report, correct? And did that come out of our capital, or 600 and something?
Yes.
Okay, so are we down to 500 and something now? Is that correct?
I can speak to her.
Yeah.
So I was just speaking with a friend of mine, and he was saying that it would seem to him to be a lot more logical, and I don't know if this is an option or not, but to connect into that city connection, the city water connection that the West Bench, the lower West Bench is currently hooked into. The connection is right there, and he was explaining to me, you just have to do the reservoir at the top, yes, and a pump station, but he said the amount of that 33 million seems quite extraordinary to him, and he said we should be looking for a Class B.
It's actually quite a bit because we have to pay the city's DCC fees. We have to pay them for every property that connects in. It's a significant amount of money, plus there's upgrades that has to be done to the city's infrastructure. They identified a couple of things that we may have to do, depends. Everything in in the agreement that we have with the city in West Bench, there is a schedule in it for Sage Mesa, and it outlines how it would all be, how the costs. But there is, when we did the high-level numbers, even upgrading what we needed to upgrade to connect the two systems in, it actually was only $2 million less. It worked out to a total of $31 million for connecting in with the city, plus the other critical upgrades like the reservoir and then the other pipes that need replacing.
Is there a way we can find that information? Is that detailed everywhere?
It's in the assessment report. It's all in there.
What is everything that's required?
Yep, it's all detailed out. There is a 40% contingency on everything, because if this takes 5-6 years to get to some places, the cost of things keep going up. So that's also why we use the Class D, because you get a Class B and you wait 2 years and you should have added a bunch more because it's not accurate anymore. So.
And I guess my other question was, if the funds are at 500 or 600,000.
So the engineering study done by McElhaney was funded from utility trust funds, which is customers' money from rates collected. And again, getting back to the basics here, there are 3 major steps in a transfer process. First of all, the owners have to be willing to transfer the system. Check mark, we have a transfer agreement signed by the RDOS and the owners. The regional district has to be willing to take on the system, and now they are, and they have very experienced technical staff operating the system. And the last part is, again, the vote, and the customers have to be in favor as well. If the estimates had to be a little bit more accurate, then there would be a lot more money spent on engineering design, and who is going to pay for that? So would the regional district be expected to pay for that without any assurance that the customers are going to approve the transfer? No. It comes right down back to the province. And if we get, by the process of elimination, there's a no vote and we end up still regulating it, then we have to look at raising all that capital for that money from the customers for both engineering, design, and tendering, construction, etc.
I have a question for the provincial government. We kind of touched on this earlier, but the provincial government's been managing this system for 35 years.
Mm-hmm.
Why was there not enough money put in the reserve fund from our payments to cover the infrastructure that we knew, that the government knew was at the end of its life? Why was there not reserve funds put in place? Why are we suddenly hearing about this now?
Because it was always in the public interest to transfer it to local government, and that would have eliminated the water treatment plant, which is a very significant capital upgrade.
But 35 years the government's been running the system.
There were many opportunities to transfer, and it came close even before my time with this utility.
The government set the rates.
Mm-hmm.
So there was 12% put into a construction fund and another percentage put into a reserve fund, and then the rest went to our operating costs for the system. Why was there not enough set aside by the government?
Because it's always been the public interest to transfer to local government where they have opportunity to apply for grants and reduce costs to customers. That is one main reason.
Okay, I have a question for Riley. Riley, in your blog, you mentioned the referendum will happen in late 2025 to provide more time to pursue grants. What grants have you pursued since you wrote the blog?
Yeah. Well, you guys will have more information on this too, but that's what I talked about in the beginning. So it is opportunity for staff to pursue grants before getting the referendum passed, which is not the usual line of events as you've heard today. private companies can apply for grants. The utility controller, private companies can apply for grants. The utility controller can't apply for grants. So that's why we've given the extra time right now, is to give the information to the citizens and then to work, like as I talked about earlier, with the minister to see if there's anything that we can do, because it is an unusual situation that we do have the government involved for the past 30 years. And I don't disagree with the question you just asked. That's exactly what we just emailed. That's what Amelia was talking about when we were meeting with Don and Ling. There's a lot of discussion going on. Do I think we're going to get a grant before it comes into the RDOS? I don't, but I do think we have a message to deliver. And it's exactly the question that you just asked. Was for the past 30 years, what's happened financially? Why are we in this situation? And that's what we've given ourselves. So remember, there was just a provincial election, there was just a federal election, and that's the time we're looking at.
But are there grants available right now for water systems, and who's competing for those grants right now in the regional district?
Yes, there are grants that we just had another one come out. Everybody's competing. We are one of many, many systems that want grants. So everybody's, yeah.
Okay, and last question for Riley. You also mentioned that there will be a potential collaboration with the Penticton Indian Band to connect with water with them. What is the outcome of those discussions that you've had with the Penticton Indian Band?
Right now, there's a feasibility study going on whether it makes sense. When you've heard the numbers between 31 million or 33 million, and the difference is that standalone, it's not a standalone for Sage Mesa, it's a standalone away from the city. So if the Penticton Indian Band wants to partner with us and that makes good sense financially, we'll explore it. We'll explore the partnership with the city. We'll explore all avenues right now. But if we go just to the city without exploring anything else, it's not really a negotiation or anything. We're just a customer. So that's what that conversation is about.
Okay, so myself as a taxpayer, I would like to see this plan more refined. Whether we're going with the city or we're going with our standalone system or going with the PIB, there needs to be more direct accountability to what are we doing. Right now, we're just being asked to vote on 33 million, and I want to make a point. It's not just 33 million, it's plus all the debt servicing on that 33 million, so it's a lot more than that. So it's a very high number. Yeah.
So when we say 33 million, those numbers that you see, that includes debt servicing. Also on
33 plus the debt servicing.
Yeah, so but the figures that we gave you for the parcel tax includes the debt servicing already.
Right. So it's
so in
$1,000 a year for each.
In the debt servicing, there's a principal repayment, just like a mortgage, and the interest portion. Just one answer I want to follow up on. As far as the grants, Director Gettins has really been diligent in going after grants. In UBCM in September, even before we were at this stage where we're going to have a vote, we started looking for grants for you. And to be fair, also for the Heritage Hills water system, Lakeview Heights, and at that time we didn't even know about the Skaha Estates, who just voted to come in now. Your water system is very unique, where we just took over a private water system, and that's where the owner was 100% responsible. We bought it for $1, both the sewer and the water, each $1, and the irrigation system, they're the ones, they in their own meeting voted to not just borrow the money, but to join us because of the benefits with the grants.
And ours is a lot higher cost than...
It is, and we are starting to prepare for the September meetings with the ministers in Victoria already. And again, to be transparent, it's not just Sage Mesa. We have 10 other systems, but we're concentrating on the newest ones, which if this goes through, you're one of them. But in September, we don't know if it's a yes or no, and we're going to go after it as if it was a yes.
My first question is just looking for a simpler answer on whether or not this is going to service new development. This is not planned to build bigger for new development, right?
No. If new development wants to come in and get serviced by this, they will pay their way. They will.
We've already built it.
You've built it, but they have to pay their portion to come into it.
So how do we get paid?
It will get paid over the years because you won't be paying as much.
But and the development doesn't really happen until after we pay for it, we're screwed.
Yes.
So
essentially.
Don't build it for bigger development.
But your rates would drop, the overall operational rates would drop because there'd be more customers.
Yeah, still here.
So,
My other question is, a lot of our turbidity and boil water is coming from a shallow intake. So why haven't we moved the intake up?
It's not our, we're not able to do that.
You
It's,
have money in the bank saving for.
we don't. The province has the ability, but extending the intake isn't necessarily the right answer.
Are you doing it on the future one?
No, we're not.
You're not going to put a deeper intake onto our new system?
If we do a standalone treatment plant, yes. That is, the 33 million estimate is based on putting in a deeper intake. But that's a standalone
But
plant
if
just
it's
for
a
Sage
water
Mesa.
now, could we put in a deeper intake?
No.
Why not?
No, it's because the boil water is on because of the chlorine contact time.
Because you have to chlorinate heavier for turbidity, right?
It all has to do with time.
Yes.
When
But
the
if
chlorine,
you haven't had so much chlorine,
No.
because you have cleaner water coming in the first place.
well, what happens is when you inject chlorine, it needs a certain amount of time in order to disinfect the water.
I understand.
So right now, to get to the lower zone, there is not enough time to disinfect the water. So that's why the whole zone is on a boil water.
Okay, but you missed the part where if we had a deeper intake and cleaner water to begin with,
Yeah,
we
it's,
wouldn't have to chlorinate. That's correct.
So from what I understand, you could have the intake 200 feet to a mile in, but the chlorination is not at the beginning of the pipe, it's at the station. And that,
Why is this a new thing then?
pardon me?
Why is this new?
It's,
We haven't been on boil water forever.
it wasn't identified until probably about 10 years ago that there was insufficient chlorine contact time. That's why the permanent boil water is on now.
so if we could go to the next person, we've got quite a number of people behind you.
All right, thank you for the presentation. First question, piggybacking off of the question about partnership with the PIB. I see that there's a new subdivision going in just up West Hills there. I was curious as to what the water source is for that, and if the water source they have is inadequate, it seems like it would be a perfect fit to partner up with PIB. And so I was wondering about the actual conversations that have been had up to this point.
Yeah, we've definitely talked about the possibility of having a joint treatment plant. Right now, we've had several conversations actually about it. So what we're doing is we're doing a feasibility. We're looking to see at a high level, does this make sense? Will the costs be reasonable? Can we service everybody? Because the Penticton Indian Band are also interested in doing this as well. So it works out really well, and we've just started with the consultant doing this pre-feasibility study now. So we are hoping probably by the end of the year, maybe we'll have some answers, or early next year.
Okay, thank you. And the next question is with respect to the Skaha Estates. I know that it just sent vote just passed, I think, about 6 months ago there. What the success has been so far in the application of grants.
The Skaha Estates, that's Heritage Hills? No. Yes, go ahead.
Yeah, the Skaha Estates Improvement District vote was about a month ago. And they just, they decided to convert to the RDOS. Right now, there hasn't been any grants. In the last 18 months, there hasn't been any programs at all that we could have applied for. There is one open up now, but the regional district is limited to 3 applications and $7 million max. So we don't know what projects they're going to be yet, because there's quite a number. It'll be up to our board of directors to decide what projects will go forward in the applications. But this is the first open application we've had in about 18 months. So we're hoping there'll be more with the push to increase the density in housing. In order to do that, we need infrastructure. So we're hoping the government will put money towards that.
Just a quick follow-up on that. So that one that's just opened up, is that provincial or federal?
I think it's a federal provincial combination. Yeah.
If the referendum doesn't go through, and this can come back at a later date after 5 years, what are the costs for the capital upgrades like expected to look like for increasing over that time?
It has to be done.
Well, some of the stuff will have to be done anyway. We've in the last 5 years, we've seen things double in cost. Since COVID hit, we've had some of our pipe materials have tripled. It's unfortunate, and now with various tariffs and stuff, it's really hard to say what it could be in 5 years from now, the cost.
Okay. And so basically, if this gets delayed, the costs are going to go up. When this report was done, because the information in it was shared at the fall meeting last year.
Yes.
How accurate is the 33 going to be enough?
Worst case.
It's the worst case scenario based on the information we have. We could increase the contingency and ask for 50% or 60%, but what we try and do is we find somewhere where it's kind of a happy medium where, okay, we believe we have enough to do all of the essential stuff that we have to do. If we don't have to spend that much, we get grants or things cost less, awesome. But we have to be able to kind of look at it as a whole and make sure we have enough. So that's kind of what we've done with those Class D estimates. At a high level, that's why the 40% contingency, we find it's usually enough. So, but, and what we're hoping as well is that once we start getting into it, there may be projects that we don't actually need to do. We might do condition assessments on some things, and it's like, hey, you know what? This has got another 20 years. We don't need to do it. But we don't know that yet. So.
And last thing, does the RDS know why there haven't, or the province, does the RDS either know why there haven't been any grant opportunities in the 18 months?
You'll have to ask the federal and provincial government that. They're in total control.
Hello. Back in the fall, and still, I feel very familiar with the worst case scenario now, and it is scary as hell. I'm sure for some people in this room, it's enough to put them over the edge, and bankruptcy might be on the board for some people in the worst case. But I don't feel familiar with anything in between. I feel like you're asking us to vote, and I still lean towards voting %, because that seems like we're kind of cornered into that. But I don't feel like we're voting on a big question mark. And in the fall, we asked for more information on some of these things that were discussed, specifically the idea of partnering with the Penticton Indian Band. To me, I feel like that might be the deal breaker in this whole thing. I know you want to make the decision after about whether we go standalone or connect to the city, but whether we do one or the other really could be the deal breaker on whether we vote for $1. And in the case of applying for grants, correct me if I'm wrong, I've looked at the other areas that you said that we're competing with. None of those situations seem as dire as ours. The ratio of the amount of money that is required to the number of residents that have to pay for it is extreme in our situation. And that conversation with the Penticton Indian Band should be prioritized so that before we have to vote, we have some answers on realistically what this looks for. Realistically, what can we expect for grants? I know that you can't give us a guarantee, but can you give us an idea? I've heard anything from 20 million to a cap of 7 million to nothing. Some sort of a guidance on that would be really, really helpful, or at least some sort of a conversation, or that we're headed in the right direction with knowing where we're going with this.
So we can't tell you something that we're not sure of. Otherwise, we're trying to buy your vote, and we'll never do that. One thing we've been discussing, I was part of the negotiation to take over this water system, and along with the other ones, we always will try to take over a system if they come to us. We don't poach, and we will always do our best. And as far as the costs go, I've been on the finance side for a lot of years, and we always give you the worst case and everybody else the worst case, because I don't want to have to come back and say, whoops, it's double the cost. This way, you know, I say worst, as far as going for grants, we have 12 water systems, not including this one because it's not ours yet. They have to compete. Ultimately, staff is spending a lot of time looking for grants for you and actually writing the reports that will go to the minister to state that you are in dire need. We realize that of the other two, you've got the highest that we're borrowing, but they're also high. And you have to look at the clients that they have. And they're in about the same position as you have. You have 242. The one we just took over at Heritage Hills was just around 300. That's not a lot of people. We also have a water system that has 12 people. So even $1,000 for...
But the total is not 33 million for Heritage Hills.
No, I'm just saying, the water is 13 and the sewer is 10, somewhere around 23,000. But what I'm saying is we're spending dedicated time because you're important to us. We may not own this water system, but you are a regional district taxpayer, and we want to protect you as much as we can.
Surely the federal government, if we're rolling in the idea of providing clean water to Indigenous land, that should give us some priority. Is that correct? Or does that not go into account?
Well, it's a win-win situation. So
Right.
with them, with PIB, they have opportunities for their own grants, and we have ours. So, but we have to do our due diligence. We can't just rubber stamp it. We've signed a feasibility study. That feasibility will study. The next step is it worthwhile going the next step? And ultimately, if it is, that's something that PIB will win, and so will not just Sage Mesa, but West Pench. And also, it takes away from negotiating in a position where Penticton has the power and we don't, and not that I'm saying that they take advantage, but if we have a ability to have our own water treatment plant, they may want to buy it from us too, which then reduces the cost even more.
I see a ton of advantages to going that way that maybe aren't highlighted necessarily, or that
So you know, I started this. I'm the one that brought it up to the staff and PIB, and I said, what do you think? Myself and a few other staff members in this here came from West Kelowna, and we went through the water treatment plant. Yes, they might be having trouble with the quality, but they have a state-of-the-art water treatment plant that was funded $43 million with reserves. Sorry, grants.
Hi. I think at the very beginning it was mentioned that it's hard to apply for grants if you don't own the system, but you're not willing to own the system without us guaranteeing you the money. Why?
Because if we take over a water system without having the ability to upgrade it the way it's supposed to be, it was recommended, it's a recipe to fail. It's what happened in the past will continue happening. So if we have the funds, you're going to have the water at the quality that IHA wants, and that we'll have a water system that meets the standards of the day.
But can we not vote on the money aspect after more information, which we would get if you owned the system and then could apply for the grants?
It's got to be together. So
Why?
because we would then have a water system without any funds. And
We already have a water system without any funds.
well, we don't own it. The regional district does not own it. And we govern, you've got 20 directors that are very fiscal, and I would never recommend to them something like that because there's a risk. And that risk is then, if something happens and it fails, something fails, all of the municipalities and the electoral areas pay, including all of electoral area F, which is West Bench, etc.
So my issue then is that it's like everybody has said so far, it's such a huge question mark. And you give us the worst case scenario, but what if we have to end up accepting the worst case scenario? And then if anybody ever tries to sell a property up here, they have to disclose that, sure, it also comes with a $9,000 a year, cost, and property values have to go down because of that. There's got to be way less interest in living up here.
Well,
You're locked into that forever.
on the reverse, you also have a good water system, which then keeps, so that stops the price from going down too. We're not here to argue this, but if you have any other question, I'll be glad to answer, but otherwise, you've got a lot of people behind you.
All right.
Hi, Warren.
Full disclosure, I work in that other water system that Jim just mentioned, and I'll just correct you, it was $41 million in grants that we received for it.
Still good.
Still good, still very good. But there was still $23.5 million in borrowing that the residents had to pay for, but spread amongst many more residents. I just want to say, you know, in this kind of situation, you can coulda, woulda, shoulda, all you want. You know, back in 1990, you probably should have handed it over. Or back in 2010, when the West Bench system was going in, this should have tied into that right away. It would have been much cheaper. But here we are now, and we have to keep moving forward, and we have to figure out how. So, you know, this is, in my eyes, the best bet is to vote yes for this water system, to borrow the money, and then we can do the work that is needed beyond that. Otherwise, you know, we have sort of the worst case scenario for borrowing with going forward with our own system, or slightly less worst case scenario with tying into Penticton. But there is a third option that I don't know has been explored or talked about at all, is a possible annexation of our area into Penticton, and what that would do. I know they would still have to set up a local area service to do the system here, but still the economies of scale and the ability to support the growth of the area would be much more pronounced, I'd say.
So you already know what I'm going to say is, if, first of all, to be annexed, West Bench and Sage Mesa would have to have a vote. And at the same time, if I was City of Penticton, and I used to work for the City of Penticton, I would ask for a vote for to borrow funds, because I wouldn't take over a water system that needs this much capital without having a guarantee. And we're both CPAs, so we know what we're talking about.
But I just wanted that out there for people to realize there is that, you know, we could petition to bring us in, but yes, we would still have to borrow the money.
Yes.
But like I say, the growth factor in the future of this area would probably be much more pronounced if we were within Penticton. So, anyway, that idea is there as well. Thanks, Jim.
No comment on that part of Penticton.
Hi there. I just have a couple questions. Does Interior Health have an order on our system which is going to force these upgrades to happen?
In working with both the RDOS and the ministry, we have delayed writing that order. That order is ready. If you guys turn it down, the owner of the water system will receive that order to proceed with the water treatment needed.
Okay, and then that's where we go into that discussion about no assent, and then the gentleman from the province had outlined $132,000 cost per household, with about $21,000 or $22,000 payable by each household fairly quickly, like in the next couple of years. Is that correct? Is my understanding on that?
They would work on the funding that is needed to build that water treatment plant.
Right, but we don't get to borrow the money then. We're all funding it ahead of time in that scenario, is that correct? Mm-hmm. Right, so I'm also an accountant, I don't work in government. I would also say too, like to me, I think the idea of not voting for assent is something that's very concerning. It's going to force us into a position where we have no control and we're fronting money up, or it's going to cost us money up front. That's one thing. Number two, just asking about those DCCs again. So say another subdivision comes into our area after the fact, maybe we've fully paid for everything now. So yes, you say there's DCCs, but those are going to the regional district, and that there's nothing coming back to us. So we've already funded it. And you said that there would be a reduction in operating costs going forward because that cost is going to be spread out further, but we're still, the 242 houses are funding this, even if there's 300 houses in the future.
So just because you're not working for regional district, and I originally came from the municipal city field. Our regional district has 162 services, soon to be 165. all the funds that are spent in the revenue stay within those services. We cannot move money from one to another. So if we collect the DCC for property up here, it stays within that water service. It doesn't. If Sage Mesa, let's say you had a park and that park was taxed separate, we don't move it to the park. It stays within the water service. And as far as that DCC, it's when you need an upgrade because you now have more clients. We draw from that. It's a government. It's also there's a government requirement. You have to have a 20-year capital plan to be able to do a DCC, and the reason that is it protects the current taxpayers, the client, you as the clients.
So 2 more questions. I'll try to be quick. You had initially said that there's $33 million. That's the expected worst-case scenario. But initially that $33 million does not include interest. I'm just trying to clarify. But yet the printout that you had of the cost per year, that does include?
So we borrow $33 million. It's like a mortgage. You draw down the principal, the interest rate goes down. We as a municipality, a local government, get special rates. We could only borrow from the Municipal Finance Authority, which is controlled by the province. So in those rates, we've got principal and we have the interest component.
Okay, so if we borrow $33 million, or authorize the borrowing for it, then presumably that money's put aside. Are we paying interest on the full $33 million immediately, or only as it's drawn?
No, you've got a very, very good finance department, and they're the three top people are here. For the first 4 years, we draw what we need. So if one of the scenarios that we did, I did a what if, and the interest rates are doing this right now. Let's say we borrow $2.4 million because that's all we need for the first year, we calculate what the parcel tax is on that, and it'll be about $700 per parcel. That's what it is. Then the next year, you do another project, so it's a 700 plus whatever. According to the rules, and it's not our option, it's the Provincial Government, Local Government Act, at the 5th year, whatever we don't use, we have to draw and put that in the bank. You then get interest on that money, so you now have the money that we just put into the bank plus the interest. And when we calculated those numbers, we deducted the interest so that you get the full benefit.
Thank you. My last question, just explain the concept of funding again. I thought I understood it, and then you threw something at us which caught me off guard. So let's just say that we were able to get $9 million of funding. Is that actually $9 million to us, or is it $6 million?
No, they under the MFA rules, they take about, I think it's 1%, and they keep 1%. Then that 1%, they give us interest on it. And when the debt's paid off, we get a nice big amount of money to help pay whatever else is left for the organization. So if we borrow $9 million, we would get, I said 1%, I'm not too sure, we would get probably $8 million, maybe 90,000.
So we're talking about government, and I might have said that wrong, and either you didn't understand me or I didn't understand you.
Maybe I didn't hear.
We're talking about government funding. So
yes.
Government funding comes through. Yes,
grants.
So government grants, yes.
Oh, okay, sorry, I was talking about borrowing, okay.
In that grant scenario, I thought I heard you say that if we got that $9 million, we really only get 6 because there's an expectation that we're funding a third of that.
No, let's use the realistic numbers. Let's say we get $5 million. Okay, so we spent that $5 million on the infrastructure, but the project cost $15 million. So now we have to pay a portion of that to meet to the $5 million. So let's say it's $5 million federal, $5 million provincial, $5 million us. There's the $15 million.
Okay, thank you.
Hello. See, you're back. That's great.
If collaborating with the Penticton Indian Band is a viable option and a win-win situation, why would we not wait until a deal is in place and then put the referendum to the public?
Well, first of all, we don't know if it's a viable option. We're doing a feasibility study, so that's important to know if it's going to go through or not. And we also would look at the costs. I'm hoping that it is. And we're telling you it's worst case scenario, but if it turns out to be viable, we're also talking long term. But by the time the decision is made, let's say it's viable, and then we go for grants, and the time it's built, you might be talking 10, 12 years down the road, and you don't want to wait 12 years.
Okay, last question for the provincial government. Does your office follow the Provincial Water Act's regulations and best practices?
Yes, we do.
Regarding the Water Sustainability Act, has your office completed a water sustainability plan for the Sage Mesa system as per section 132 of the WSA?
I'm not familiar with that particular clause.
Have
You
you
could-
done a water sustainability plan for Sage Mesa as a provincial government?
Water sustainability plan. Well, the lake source is the current source of water for this utility.
Well, it's a plan that the regulations say that every water system has to do. Is there a plan in place? Is there a water sustainability plan for Sage Mesa?
I cannot tell you that, an answer. I do not know.
Okay.
You can direct that to Chris McMillan, and he will coordinate that out of our office.
Wait, hold on. Just so everyone knows, staff has to pick up the chairs by 8:30 and get out of here. So I'll limit it to whoever's in line for the questions. Sorry, I just had to, because I got the signal.
And I really appreciate everything the RUS is doing for us. My questions are mostly directed to the provincial government. And according to the 2004 ombudspersons, there is supposed to be a plan in place. Who is doing this long-term planning currently? Because you have a report that's from 2004 saying that we need to have a plan in place because we know there is a lifespan for these water treatment systems. You've had this in control. You've been in control of this system since 1990. I moved up into the area in 2019. Rates went up. Somebody made those rates go up. Is that the provincial government?
Those rates were set by the deputy controller, yes,
The provincial government.
since 19, and before as well. The utility would have applied for rates before 1990. All the rates would have gone through the deputy controller for approval.
So my understanding is that in 1990, Chapman wasn't doing a good job, so the provincial government took over. So what did the provincial government do between 1990 and 2019 to meet these requirements that they were saying Chapman didn't fulfill?
We have kept the system running in the best interests of the customers, and we have not spent any monies or raised them unnecessarily, because it has always been a known fact that the best and cheapest solution was to connect to the city of Penticton instead of wasting money on a water treatment plant and putting money into other infrastructure that would become redundant.
True, but at this point we can't connect to the city of Penticton because of the state of the pipes. So is the provincial government willing to take on Sage Mesa and replacing those pipes so that we are more viable to the city, or these options are more open to us? Why are we paying for this when you took it over in 1990 and no one did any work when it's reasonable to think things were a lot cheaper in 1990?
Well, you're basing your conclusions on a very recent engineering study. And like I said before, that there have been opportunities to transfer the system, and it did not happen because of the owners refusing to transfer. And
no, but you still replaced water tanks, did you not? Because you did replace some that have broken. So I'm just saying, like, is there an option? I'll stop with this. But I'm thinking there should be the option for the provincial government to take some ownership for this situation and to replace some of those ones that are in dire condition, so that we don't have to cover this entire cost, because we were not made aware of this until 2019.
I'm only hopping in here right now. I don't have an answer to that, but that is the conversation that we're in the process of right now with the ministry. So the frustration that you're feeling, like, email me that. Tell me about it. Like, I know, because I'm with you. That's the conversation we're having right now with her, is what's been going on and why are we in this position. But to Warren's point, we are in this position. So we can leave the system with the province, and you've seen what those numbers look like. And that's a decision that the ratepayers have to make. But your anger and where you're frustrated, I get you. Because we all thought when the province had it, there was a bit of a financial oversight and things were happening. That is a conversation for me. Al is a staff person, so he has to make those decisions under the realms that he works within. But what you're feeling is what I'm feeling, and that's the conversation that I'm having, Amelia's having, Helena's having, like, you're political people. The staff are the staff doing their job, and that's why we're hearing now. So email me, share with us. I'd love to keep shooting these off to the ministry. Be like, help us out here. There's something here.
You got it.
Okay, one question each from the three of you, please. Well, if it's an A and a B, just hold your breath and say it quickly. Sorry.
If the feasibility study comes back that a new water treatment plant that would be joint with the PID, potentially even with the city of Penticton as well, if there is a joint feasibility option, when would the decision on going with a new standalone plant connecting to the city of Penticton, working with the PIB, when would that decision have to be made?
Well, just remember, though, if the decision is for the water treatment plant, you could be talking 10 years, 12 years down the road. So there has to be an interim solution. Ultimately, if this goes to the regional district, you will always get recommended the best deal, whatever is the safest water supply at the best cost. So I can't really tell you when, because right now we're at the feasibility stage. Is that your B?
Yes, this will be the, I meant in the sense that there's two halves of what needs to be done for kind of upgrades, right? There's the immediate stuff, which is the reservoir and that end, and then there's the future part, which is more the two options that were the 31 or the 33, the second half
Yep.
of 31.
Yeah, the treatment options.
Yeah.
Yeah, the decision for the treatment, we're doing the feasibility. It's actually a pre-feasibility study. If it shows it's favorable, then we will actually get into the feasibility study, which my guess will take at least another year. And if it shows that it is actually really good, we've got kind of the draft plan, then we would move, that's when we would make a decision probably and move forward. But it's not going to be at least another year. We won't know we won't know for a little while.
Thank you for taking the time to be here tonight and all the work you guys and your staff have done. One question, I'm going to turn it to a two-parter because I have to. The first question is, it seems like the province and everybody is pushing for us to join the Penticton system, and the turnaround time for that, may I be correct, will be significantly faster to get clean drinking water to the people of Sage Mesa system than fancying about fiddle farting through bureaucratic nonsense with the PID, the federal government. I understand it's a negotiation tactic, but working in the federal government for 20 years is slow as molasses. These people need clean water, and we should not have third world water in 5 minutes from Penticton. And so I'm just, my point here is, I guess, a lot of frustration that it is nonsense that's gotten this far. Shame on the province for not notifying us. And it's nonsense that it could take 10 years to get clean water back to the people in the area here that need it. And then it's going to significantly affect everybody's house value, ability to sell, and livelihood. And I just think let's pick the fastest option to get the cleanest water to people that's reliable. And I don't understand why we're doing anything different than that.
I couldn't have said it better. The sooner, if we take it over, we're going to immediately start. There's a process. Just because you vote yes, the province has to rubber stamp it. But usually it is a rubber stamp. But we do have to ask the province permission to take you over after you vote yes.
Yeah, and I appreciate that, and I do. I'm not upset with you, but it is a shame that it's gotten to this. It's disheartening. But the second question is for Lisa, just to clarify. I know we've spoken before.
the $33 million, is that to replace every single piece of pipe that's in the ground, or is that just some of the pipe that's in the ground? Because I understand there's not a lot of granting for infrastructure that's in the ground. So is that for every single piece of pipe, including the Bearland strata, the Westwood strata, or is that just everywhere, like the main lines?
I think it covers about 80% of all of the water mains. Everything in the lower zone would be replaced, and there are some in the upper as well. But I'd have to look at the report to see exactly which ones. But I believe it covers about 80% of the pipes.
And if something were to go in the Bearland strata, is that covered by part of the system? Like, or is that up to Bearland strata people to cover that?
In the strata itself,
Part of the main lines?
it would be the strata's responsibility, I believe.
Yeah, it is the
Yeah.
Maryland strata because they own the property.
Yeah.
One more question?
So that
It's
we're
gotta be-
paying more money for pipes that aren't even gonna be fixed in our own strata. Is that accurate? Why would we be paying in the strata owners, there's 83 properties, why would we pay the same amount of money as everybody else when we have to already pay for our own pipes to fix?
Because you're being fed by the rest of the system.
But not
So,
So
yeah.
now we have to have time for one question because we do have to wrap up.
That one really bothers me, because I'm also the treasurer for that strata, so that's actually not what I'm going to speak about. And I'm not upset with the Al up here or Judy up here. I completely get it, you're just representatives. My question is for Riley, however. There's been gross mismanagement. There should have been assessments. There should have been assessments a long time ago. There should be a contingency fund. So it's mismanagement. If that's a private company, we sue that private company for mismanagement. Are we going to go after them for the legal liability for mismanagement? My understanding here is that Interior Health is regulating the health of what our water should be. This is not an overnight thing. I saw those pipes. That's 35 years from the coming. So you haven't done anything in that regard. The province hasn't done anything in that regard. The private owner hasn't done anything in that regard. There should be a legal responsibility for them, and I also think we have to move forward. We're going to have to say yes, but they should also be pursued for funding.
So, I don't know what I understand the frustration in the statement you just made. I don't know what the question for me is. What I can say is it's not.
Are you as a regional district going to pursue it legally on behalf of the homeowners?
No, we're not going to pursue it legally. If we did pursue it legally, it's the homeowners, the ratepayers that would be paying that bill. That's how the money would come from. So no, we're not. That is not on our agenda. Again, the frustration that you're feeling, I don't disagree with that at all. I think there was things going on in the last 30 years that should have been taken care of by people that we thought were taking care of it. So I don't disagree with what you're saying. This is not a regional district system. It's a private company. We couldn't get any more involved in this than we could with the store down on Main Street. That has to be made clear. So the frustration of what you wanted the regional district to do to compensate for the last 30 years, we can't. It wasn't ours.
No, I'm saying if we vote yes, will you pursue the province and Interior Health and the private company for mismanagement so that you get some of that funding?
We are our own payers if we do that, right? Like if we sue the province, we're paying that. Like that's how that all works. So no.
We're not paying it in 200 households.
No, we're not.
The entire province is paying.
Yeah, if that comes to pass, that's not a discussion that we're having right now. No, sorry.
So it's getting close to us packing up here. I thank you for coming. We are going to be having another meeting. If you have any questions, if you send it to there's a QR code out there that it will take you to our webpage where you ask a question and we will have it online. So again, thank you. We've got to have staff now to start packing up. Thanks.